Hey guys, it's Saturday night. Beautiful, beautiful night here in Ontario, Canada. This time of year, it's just as hot in Canada. It's actually, I think it's hotter than it is even in LA. Isn't that crazy? Um, I'm more sore than I have ever been in my life after an arm wrestling event. Um, so, Dave, thanks a lot for that. Right to wire. For me, it was a really super tough match, and in all honesty, going into it, I really didn't know if I could win. Um, I really thought that I'd be lucky to win it, and I kind of thought I knew what it would take to win, and um, I think I was lucky that I got to execute fairly according to plan. I wanted to make this video, uh, for the most part, just really to show appreciation for the fans of arm wrestling, for all you people who are following the sport now. Uh, I'm just totally thrilled to have everybody paying attention to this thing that so many of us have loved for such a long time. And I wanted to address the King's move in a way that is maybe relatable for most people. Arm wrestlers, I'm not. This isn't really so much for them. The technical aspects of the King's move, uh, I'll tell you right now that it is an advanced move, and don't even think about doing King's move until you've got all your fundamentals down, uh, and then all sorts of things on top of it. King's move is a move that's typically used well by people, I would say, with no kidding, uh, at least 15 to 20 years in the sport. Uh, Not to say you can't do it, it's just very uncommon. So I just wanted to tell a little bit about the move and why I personally love it and why it's got this name, because really what it is it's an open top roll. It's a top roll that doesn't have a lot of shoulder commitment to its main drive, although with all arm wrestling moves there should be an element of balance to everything. But King's move's anchor is pronation and drag. Now, King's move's been around a very long time, probably forever. Um, it's not practiced by many. Um, I remember when I was coming up, we had a great King's mover. He's still active today, Crazy George. Is a big inspiration of mine. Crazy George was a massive inspiration of mine because one of the most beautiful things about arm wrestling to me is when the stronger man loses to the weaker man. To me, that shows art. To me, that shows skill. To me, that shows that it's a thinking man's sport. To me, it shows that it's trainable. You can get better at it, not just in the ways of physicality. And to me, that's appealing. I think that's cool. Um, it also is a move that has been used by very senior arm wrestlers. Crazy George is almost, I think he's in his 70s now. He might be 71. And in my opinion, uh, I don't know. I haven't seen George compete at a super high level in quite some time, but it's my opinion that it would still be difficult to find a person that's George's weight in the entire world to beat him over 3 out of 5 or whatever in a rule system like the WAL uses. Um, so to me, that was really inspiring. It told me that this sport that I loved, I was potentially going to be able to continue and to remain at a high level for a very long time. And to me, that's super appealing. Super appealing to get to do an activity, for late into your life. Um, and Crazy George always got a lot of heat, and he had his supporters and he had his haters. Um, Throughout all my time in arm wrestling, there's been the traditionalists, and there's been kind of the people who are, for lack of a better term, I'll just say past that. You hear people talk about the hook, and like the press is kind of like the more respected and macho way of winning a match. You get a lot of complaints still about people even top rolling. The famous line, yeah, but can you beat me in a hook? Or, people who use a strap very effectively. You get a lot of fundamentalists talking about how it's impure arm wrestling. And it's never been my mindset. It never has been. It's never been something that really even entered my way of thinking. I really just look at the game, and I look at how you win, and I try not to define that ever. I just try and do my very best within the constraints and restraints of the game that we're playing. Um, so I'm a big fan of all things arm wrestling: strap arm wrestling, flopping, kings moving, hooking, being fast, using ref script, whatever it takes, whatever you are. I think that's great. And I also know that people are different, and that controversy's great, and that dialogue's fantastic. So to all the fans of arm wrestling, um, whatever, I love your support, but I also just love that there's people who love the sport, and but I'm just telling my story. Um, Now, in the latest little bit, it hasn't been called the King's Move forever. It's been, I don't know what people used to call it. Uh, I think it used to be referred to as like a drop top, or an open top roll. King's Move came about in the last kind of period of rage around the Michael Todd rise to ascendance. Michael started to get really good in, I think it was probably around 2000 and, oh geez, I don't know, maybe it was around 9, 10 or so, maybe 10. I could have my dates a little bit wrong, but I think he blew his arm with Bortolato in maybe 9, I don't know. And it was shortly after that his King's Move started to get really real. And this is the first time in kind of modern history of arm wrestling where there's been a super heavyweight that has had a really nasty King's Move. So it once again drew a lot of light to it. Um, so it just went on and on. Eventually, it was actually Derek Smith from California, great young arm wrestler. He's like, I'm going to call it the King's Move, because we were thinking of names to call it. And he said the reason why is because basically one of the main issues with the King's Move is that as you drop your body, it becomes, in a sense, more powerful. In many ways, it becomes more powerful to a point where you're playing with that line where as your shoulder drops potentially below the table, it gets even more powerful. Now, there's rules in place and they're always under review and debate and discussion about what that all means, but that rule is in place due to safety. That one, along with looking away from your hand when you're arm wrestling, those two are called dangerous position fouls, and they're put in place to reduce the risk of bone breaks and injuries that you can get in arm wrestling. I'll say it's primarily targeted at beginner and amateur arm wrestlers because in no way are you ever going to tell a guy like Bill Sinks or Jerry Carteret to look at their hand. It would be crazy to do. But I wouldn't want to see any amateur arm wrestle like Bill or Jerry, unless I knew that they'd been pulling. Their coach was like, yeah, they're a freak, they're good, don't worry about them. And that one's been kind of left alone. But the King's move is one that's still like we're calling it. In my opinion, if the elbow stays on the pad, you're probably good. That's just my opinion. Separate topic, but so basically, what the King's move is saying is, I am willing to break my arm, and as a professional fighter, arm wrestler, you have that right. You have the right to expose yourself to as much risk as you want. You're a mature athlete, and you get to choose your level of risk. And someone who's willing to do that for the win, that's why you call him the king, right? If you're willing to break your arm and the other guy, doesn't have that level of commitment, sometimes that can be the difference. Test your frame. It is real in this sport. If people don't recognize that there's a lot of things that go into this sport, but connections, bones, your skeleton, it's a massive part of the game. If your frame is solid, you're at a big advantage. King's move is got test your frame written all over it. Anyways, I hope you guys got something about that, something from that. Just me kind of talking about King's move there. I had to rely on it heavily, and I'll tell you that probably as I face stronger and stronger opponents in this phase of my career, I will most likely use King's move more and more, unless there's some kind of a rule change or whatever. So I've always been a supporter. It's a fantastic move. I'll do whatever it takes to use the best angle or the best technique against whatever competitor I'm facing. I think that the more people wrap their mind around the King's move and understand it, they'll understand that it is not the ace of spades. I'd say it's more like, a great jack in terms of technique. Maybe in a strap it's more like a queen, but it's by no means is it some great card. It really comes down to how good of an arm wrestler are you once you get your move established. It's still, the King's move has massive flaws. Okay, the whole not climbing aspect of it is its probably greatest downfall. Its lack of shoulder commitment is another big downfall of it. It is hard to deal with, especially if you don't accept it. So I would just my suggestion to all the fans of arm wrestling is just know that it's not easy. Okay, you'll see people say things online about the King's move. It's this, it's that. It doesn't involve muscle. It involves just a bone line. Well, you know what? There's little bits of truth to everything that's being said. However, I'll tell you, there's so much muscle involved. There's so much strength involved in a King's move. I'm more muscularly sore today than I've probably ever been after a match. Okay, all my muscles are totally fatigued and damaged. Um, and to the arm wrestlers coming up, uh, I just say, are they going to have a rule change? I don't think that they will. And if they do, uh, it's going to open up a whole nother can. Okay, and it always will. Every time you make a rule change, it's gonna do what you think it might, but then there's gonna be all sorts of other things that come from it. And you have to think: do you want to shrink things, or do you want to let them grow? And I think that you have to be careful how you prune. I think that we should always be making small rule changes, small adjustments, but I would look at it more in terms of less of making the King's move less powerful and more in a terms of empowering inside arm wrestling. And I think that we're going to get that by just allowing people to move forward more. But I just say play with it, learn about it, learn how to beat it, and learn because that way uh, it's going to make just better matches, better fights. Anyways, uh, what a trip. Thanks, Dave Chaffee, for a great match. Thanks, World Arm Wrestling League, for continuing to promote arm wrestling at the highest levels. And thanks for all the fans worldwide for letting this tree of arm wrestling continue to grow.